How's it going, ladies and bruises? I'm Bobby Sixkilla and welcome back to Route Double. We're on the run from the security department. We've just come to visit Miss Enna because we couldn't think of any other adults that might be able to help us, and she really didn't help us either, so I don't know what we're going to do next, but I guess we're about to find out. Hey Marshido, what did you mean by run away? Shh. Marshido shushed him and answered with telepathy. We can't trust Miss Enna. She's not opening her heart to us. What does that mean? When she finished talking, Miss Enna seemed oddly obstinate, didn't she? So I tried to see if I could use empathy on her, but I couldn't hear her mental voice at all. That's proof that she isn't opening her heart. Marshido's eyes were blurred with sadness. No way. The smile he saw on Enna's face just now flickered in the back of Natsuhiko's head. It was such a kind smile by appearances, and yet... Did Professor Tsubakiyama not actually trust us? He couldn't understand why not, but he could smell danger somewhere. If we stay here too long, she could call the security department on us. Let's get out of here calmly, but quick. Yeah. The kids walked down the hallway, trying to look as casual as they could, nimbly passing through surveillance camera dead spots all the while. So, where do we go next? We're in a tight spot, huh? Since we can't find Mr. Ukita, we're out of adults we can trust. Natsuhiko pondered Marshido's observation, and he noticed that he did have one person in mind. What's up, Natsuhiko? Did you think of someone? Well, kinda, but we're barely acquainted, though. Oh. Someone both you and Salu know. It seemed to finally click to Marshido when she said that. Yeah, when you've been cornered, I guess it really is a hero that you need. Ah, the lady, Jun. And with that, the kids left the school. And they boarded as they boarded the taxi, the driver asked them, "Where are you heading next?" "The fire station." The driver nodded and began to input their next destination. You must think we're going to some random ass locations, man. It's like these guys are all over the place. The hell? Orokume City Central Fire Station. Natsuhiko, Marshido and Salu got off the taxi in front of the building they'd never visited before. They weren't entirely sure of how the fire department was organised, but the rescue squad members were probably here too. The fire station, so that means we're here to see Jun Mortabe? Exactly. But it's kind of a gamble though. I hope Jun's around, but considering what had happened so far, they had no room for optimism. We might get the same reaction we got from Professor Tsubakiyama, so we need to be careful. I don't know if I can pull it off or not, but I'll try using empathy too. I can't just make Marshido do all the work. And with that thought in mind, they stepped foot out into the premises, prompting a cheerful voice to call out to them. Huh? Well, if it isn't Natsuhiko, Marshido and Louise, what's up? Hello, Jun. It's been a while. Hello. Oddly enough, Sally seemed to have read the atmosphere and greeted her courteously. Yep, great to see such well-mannered kids. So what brings you guys to these parts? You didn't come all the way here to see little old me, did you? Actually, we did. Wait, seriously? You see, there's something we want to talk to you about. The kids explained the circumstances to the cheerful and casual Jun. They told her about the terrorists boiling with hatred in the city. They told her about the possibility those terrorists could conduct destructive activities in various parts of town. And at the end of their explanation, Jun asked them with a serious look on her face, "Is that true?" It might sound like a joke, but it's true. Yeah, you guys sound like you're for real. And Jun made a bitter face. Marshido asked her again, "Jun, do you believe us?" Well, if I had to go by your story alone, it'd be hard to believe right off the bat, you know? But there have been some things that have been bugging me lately, see? What do you mean? Well, they've been deploying us way too much lately. There's been such a spike in the sheer number of incidents alone that it feels unnatural. Jun, do you think those accidents and incidents could be connected to terrorism? I never thought about it at all, but hearing your story makes me think so. The atmosphere at work's gotten so tense lately. I wonder if everyone else has started to think something was off. I see. As he listened to Jun's answer, Natsuhiko concentrated with all his mind. First he searched for Jun's characteristic brain waveform and quickly identified it. Jun's a Type 8, huh? That was the waveform associated with idealists and challengers. He found it fitting as he concentrated further. Now I need to try the same trick I did when I read Mum's mind, assuming that wasn't just a hallucination, that is. Focus from the bottom of my heart. I want to know what's on her mind. He fiercely wished to know whether or not Jun truly believed what they said. What's wrong, Natsuhiko? What's with that strained face all of a sudden? Natsuhiko paid no heed to her voice and concentrated further, and suddenly Jun's natural voice disappeared, and another voice echoed in his head. Hey, you okay? Can you hear it? It's like you can't even hear me. What's wrong? Honestly. Is he that worried? Well, I guess so. I mean, they're asking me for help. Yeah, so in that case, I better give him some reassurance. Natsuhiko gasped. This time he was certain that it was no hallucination. That was Jun's mental voice. I used empathy. He was both surprised and grateful. Looks like I figured out the trick. I guess intention really is important. Perhaps people are best able to learn new abilities when they truly need them. Furthermore, Jun's innermost thoughts were full of concern for the three of them. Natsuhiko took a big breath of relief. I'm okay, it was just a big relief you believed us, that I nearly passed out. A little faint of heart, are we? That's no good. You gotta man up if you're a boy. But that's great, there's nobody else we could count on. Nah, I'm glad to help out whenever I can. Well, terrorism is a little out of our area of expertise, but if you like, I'm sure I can talk with someone up. But before Jun could complete a sentence, a shrill sound interrupted her. Huh? What? What's that sound? A dispatch. That very moment, Jun's face became stern. At the same time, they heard a siren echo from the fire station building. What's going on? I'm guessing it's got something to do with that. What? The kids didn't notice until Jun mentioned it, but far off in the distance they could see black smoke. Don't tell me that's another terrorist attack. The moment that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, Jun patted him on the shoulder. Sorry, I gotta go check it out for a bit. Looks like we'll have to save this discussion for later. Jun... Masato spoke with an expression full of anxiety, but Jun just smiled as if to cheer her up. What's with that face? The desire to protect this town is something all of us share. And I'm gonna protect this town my way. So you guys do whatever it is you can. Capiche? Yes. Yep, good answer. Later guys, see ya. The kids waved their hands. Sorry. The kids waved their hands as Jun headed inside the fire station. Before long, a fire truck emerged from the station and passed by. Natsuhiko muttered as they watched it leave. Do whatever it is we can, huh? Yeah. They nearly had Jun's cooperation, but they couldn't quite get it. But be that as it may, just loitering here until Jun returned wouldn't be doing whatever it is they could. Okay, let's go too. Huh? If Jun's dispatching to the site of a terrorist attack, then the culprit might be there too. I see, the culprit always appears at the scene of the crime, right? Let's leave the firefighting to Jun's team. We'll go search for the culprit. And with that decision made, the kids boarded onto the taxi once more. Mr. Driver, follow that fire truck. Huh? Hell yeah, I've always wanted someone to tell me that. Okay, voice command. Drive mode, manual. Here we go, boys and girls. The driver slammed the accelerator and the taxi sped off toward the lingering smoke in the distance. And soon enough, the taxi stopped. The kids were shocked to see what lay before them as they got down. Here? It was the PRC, the same institute that they had known to be a Q target since yesterday. An explosion probably happened here. There were shards of glass everywhere. The building was wrecked. Jun's team was apparently already inside, fighting fires and saving lives. So this place really was being targeted. The terrorists had finally sprung into action. Natsuhiko nodded and looked around. There were onlookers gathered around the building. The crowd, of course, included staff members who escaped the building, as well as policemen and security department people, but the culprit could be in the crowd. Yet the culprit always appears at the scene of the crime, they say. They weren't quite sure of the authenticity of that saying, but that was all they could rely on for now. But it was quite a difficult task to find the culprit, since they had no leads. Masato, can you search the crowd for the man you saw on the bus 2 days ago? In a crowd this big, it's obviously going to be hard. He might not be wearing the same sunglasses after all. But maybe we can find him with unconventional methods. Like what? Let's just say there's more than one way to use telepathy. Masato gave a bold smile as she placed a finger at her temple. The culprit hates communicators, so let's exploit that hatred. I'll send untargeted telepathy to all the onlookers. You guys watch for anyone whose reaction looks suspicious. Got it. Roger. I apologize for the language in advance, so don't be surprised, okay? Oh, here goes. And with that, Masato closed her eyes. Hey, you dumbass bomber, you think you got away, stupid? You hate communicators, huh? So why the hell are you watching the fire when one's right behind you? The head-splitting telepathy echoed inside their heads. At the same time, all the onlookers cowered in fear. Do anyone's reactions look off? Natsuhiko and Salyu darted their eyes around the crowd. People were bewildered. People were looking around. There were various reactions, but but just one person's reaction stood out as different. At the same time Mashiro's telepathy rang out, the man turned and looked behind his shoulder in shock. Huh? That man looked familiar to Natsuhiko. His stern face, huge body, and finally, his uniform. Mashiro, Sally, it's him! The girls followed the path of Natsuhiko's finger, and their faces stiffened. That's the very same security guard they ran into when they trespassed into BRC yesterday. I'm not surprised. He did seem dodgy as balls. In fact, I think I said at the time that he's probably the terrorist. The words they'd heard from Ina earlier that day had come to mind, and she did say that the Q recruited people that worked at the facilities so that they could do the inside job thing. Oftentimes they choose staff members whose connections to the target buildings to be the perpetrators, yeah. The use of such sleeper agents increased the success rate of their terrorist acts. A sleeper agent, that was exactly the answer to the question that had been bugging Natsuhiko since yesterday. The answer to why the security guard overreacted to what they said back then too. The answer to why he'd filed a false report to the security department. It's because he's the culprit behind everything. The moment he made that realization, he heard the onlookers start a commotion. What was that telepathy just now? Yeah, she said something about a bomber. That's when Mashiro sent in more telepathy. Officers, security department people, the bomber's that guy who looks like a security guard. He's super duper dangerous, so all your onlookers need to be careful, okay? The commotion grew even louder. The security guard in question became quite uncomfortable and tried to slip his way out of the crowd of onlookers. Sully, I know, it's my turn now. And with that, Sully slipped into the crowd and chased after the security guard. Mashiro, it's dangerous, so stay back. Natsuhiko warned Mashiro as he chased after Sully. And once the security guard slipped out of the crowd, Sully let out a battle cry and lunged at him, dragging him into an alley. You brats! Sully sidekicked the security guard in the knee before he could finish talking. Damn it! The security guard pulled out his extendable baton. Shut! But as soon as he got it all ready, Sully front kicked his wrist. The baton tumbled to the ground, but Sully didn't stop. Her gracefully executed roundhouse kick drew an arc through the air and into the back of his neck. That would knock him out. The security guard muttered and moaned, and collapsed to the ground. He tried to get up, but his knee gave out and he couldn't stand. You should stop resisting, you have no chance to succeed. Stop it, Sully, you're going overboard. He bombed a building, she's not going overboard. Kick him a few more times. Natsuhiko rushed up next to Sully and tried to be the voice of reason. He stood between Sully and the security guard and interrogated the man. You're with Q, aren't you? The security guard didn't answer. His facial expression merely moved ever so slightly. There's no doubt about it, he's a terrorist. Natsuhiko continued with conviction. Because of you, we had the security department breathing down our necks. We're going to prove our innocence by turning you into the security department and making you talk. The security guard's face warped. He staggered up to his feet. There's no point trying to escape with a pitiful limp like that. The security department's swarming all over the place. The moment he thought that, Mashiro's voice echoed in the alley. That's right, this is the end of your evil deeds. Mashiro, I said not to come, stupid. He turned around and shouted at Mashiro, which created just a moment's opening. The security guard pulled a small knife out of his pocket. Natsuhiko, watch out! The sound of Sully's voice left Natsuhiko breathless. The security guard readied himself and stabbed the knife into his own stomach. Huh? Natsuhiko doubted his eyes. The spray of blood from the man's stomach splashed onto Sully's face. Time seemed to stop for a moment. But that was of course just an illusion. Mashiro's scream snapped Natsuhiko and Sully back to their senses. He stabbed himself? Why? Don't tell me he did it to avoid getting apprehended by the security department. Since he succeeded in blowing up the PRC, his duty is done. So he's basically a suicide bomber. Mashiro shouted to the confused Natsuhiko. We need to take him to the hospital. Huh? This terrorist? Of course, what if he dies? Certainly taking the life was not their intention in the slightest. Sully spoke up quietly. If he dies, then we won't be able to prove our innocence. That's right, let's call him an ambulance. They didn't have their PDAs on them to call 119. The kids reluctantly dashed out of the alley to look for a payphone. As they got out, they heard some onlookers talking amongst themselves. Hey, did you hear us scream? Did it have anything to do with that telepathy earlier? And then mixed with those onlookers, they saw familiar people lingering around. They were the men that they had been fearing ever since yesterday. The security department. Oh no, what did we do? A few minutes ago, they would have run, but the situation was different now. It might be a long shot, but let's turn the culprit over to them. Huh? If we tell the security department, I'm pretty sure they'll call an ambulance for us, and besides, if we want to clear our names, now might be our only chance. Otherwise they'll add fucking murder on top. Are you sure it won't complicate things if we show them that crime scene? If they saw it, they'd accuse us of stabbing an upstanding citizen in retaliation for filing a report on us. I know it's a gamble, but we can't keep running forever, can we? Besides, if we don't act quick, he'll die. No more running, no more hiding. Our best option is to talk to the security department now and get them to understand the truth. You're right. Okay. Marshido took a deep breath and yelled, "Security department people, over here please. The PRC bomber's over here. And he's attempted suicide too. Please call an ambulance." What? The security department members rushed over once they heard the kids' voices. "We've done what we could." As he watched the security department members rush in, Natsuhiko prayed. He prayed they made the right choice to clear the names of their false charge. The kids explained the truth to the security department. The security department called an ambulance and took the man to Rokume City Hospital. Fortunately, his wound wasn't as deep as they initially believed, and his treatment apparently went by relatively quickly. As for Natsuhiko, Marshido and Salyu, they were taken to the municipal office and underwent a long, thorough investigation. They explained everything in detail to the security department, starting with why they'd sneaked into PRC. It took a long time to get the security department to understand all the details. They didn't seem easily swayed, but eventually the security department members went to the hospital and interrogated the security guard, thus learning that he had falsified the report and his abdominal injury was self-inflicted. The kids' methods earned them reproval for their recklessness, but their results earned them recognition for successfully apprehending an alleged terrorist in the end. Thank you for your cooperation. And with the final stereotypical line from the security department members who had been chasing them for hours, the kids left the municipal office. It was quite dark by the time they'd gotten outside. We need to go see Yuri. They could have at least given us a reward. Or dinner. Marshido grumbled as they walked. She was quite on edge when the investigation began, but once she heard the security guard was okay, she returned to her usual self. I don't know if she's being too greedy or too soft. Natsuhiko smiled wryly as he made his reply. Now, let's just be glad they didn't end up putting us in custody, shall we? Well, I guess. Nothing's more valuable than freedom, I guess. You two are so unselfish. Sully seemed unsatisfied, but Natsuhiko wasn't at all. Now that their names were cleared, they could move around without fear of the security department's shadow. And of course, that meant they could return home. Oh boy, we can finally rest easy. He may have been injured, but at least we caught the culprit. They said the full-blown investigation will start once he's healed, right? I wish he'd pick up the pace for goodness sake. I know, but it's getting late today, so let's just go home and eat for now. Yay, food, we haven't eaten anything since breakfast. Natsuhiko smiled as they were finally able to have a calm conversation for the first time that day. But there was one regretful thing that happened. In the end, we couldn't stop the terrorists from blowing up the PRC like they wanted to. Yeah, but at least there weren't any casualties. That was another thing they'd heard from the security department. Thanks to Jin's team, all the PRC staff members were rescued successfully. But that was still nothing to be happy about. Actually, there's one more thing that bothers me. The security guard wasn't the man I saw on the bus. Huh? So I guess there are still more of them in town. Natsuhiko gasped at Marshido's statement. I see. I have an idea about that point. If you think about it calmly, the fact that the security guard stabbed himself in the stomach was also bizarre. Huh? What do you mean? While he did accomplish his mission to blow up the PRC, he had no need to commit suicide. The fact that his wound was superficial was also worrying. The answer I derive from these issues is that probably his suicide act was just that, an act. A performance to make it appear that all incidents had reached a conclusive end. A performance? If he went that far, anyone would believe that he was the one behind the entire string of incidents. But what if it was just an act to avert public gaze away from other criminals? You mean, the incidents aren't over yet? Everyone's faces stiffened at that statement. Natsuhiko stopped walking and interjected, Hold on a second, before we go back home, let's think things through a bit. If there are still terrorists around, what else do you think might happen here? More terrorism, I guess, but what other targets are there? There's plenty. The BC-related facilities that received the objectionable literature. But we heard the security department was tightening their guard around those facilities, and the objectionable literature was a diversion for the Parapsychology Research Center bombing in the first place. Targeting those addresses would defeat the purpose of the diversion. Then what else could they be up to? Natsuhiko got the feeling they were missing something important. He thought about what that missing something could be. Arson? They wouldn't have to make such an elaborate diversion to do that. I thought about that all the diversions were set up for the PRC bombing, but was that not the case? Did they have a target besides the PRC? Natsuhiko's train of thought led them to that point before something flashed in the back of his mind. Then he realized exactly what it was they were missing. Hey, Mashiro. Yeah? The man you saw on the bus mentioned ending this town's history, right? Huh? Well, yeah, but blowing up the PRC wouldn't end this town's history, would it? I mean, what if the PRC explosion itself were a diversion? Mashiro's face froze at the suggestion. Hold on, you mean they're targeting a bigger facility than the PRC? Yeah, something that sort of symbolizes the city. Something they can destroy to satisfy their hatred against communicators. But where would you find a facility like that? The PRC is the biggest BC research facility in town, isn't it? You don't mean school, do you? No, they already caused a panic at the school with the bomb threat, so the moment Natsuhiko began to speak, if it were me, Sally finally broke her silence with a sighed utterance. I'd target that place. Sally pointed at the map posted at the bus stop. On the other side of her fingertip was an illustration of the hexagonal building, Labo. Huh? Labo? Sally, that's not a BC related facility. It's a nuclear research facility. I know, but if I'm not mistaken, they should have a nuclear reactor. The moment he heard reactor, Natsuhiko was suddenly struck by an unpleasant feeling. And? These terrorists hate communicators and are committing acts of terrorism that'll end this town's history, correct? Yeah. What if we take that to mean their true intention is to raze the town in its entirety and destroy the communicators? Natsuhiko and Mashiro gasped at the same time. You're right. If he caused a meltdown in the nuclear reactor there, they would definitely do it. No, not even a terrorist would do that, would they? Why not? It's the most logical target. Yeah, but she couldn't find how to continue. Sully's idea sounded like a crazy delusion, but it couldn't necessarily be dismissed as nonsense. If they did blow up the nuclear reactor, that would certainly end this town's history. The moment he thought that, he suddenly heard Ukita's words playing in the back of his head. You'll have probably heard of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster in the Ukraine, causing enormous casualties. The residents in the vicinity and the firefighters sent to handle the accident were hit the hardest. Over 3,000 of them died, and the number only rose after that. Natsuhiko shuddered. Mashiro started to tremble. Then you mean the PRC explosion was another diversion? And Q's real target is Labo. Calm down, Mashiro, it's just conjecture, that's all. That's right. What I said was nothing more than conjecture. Yeah, but it's still a possibility. So shouldn't we go to Labo and give them a warning? Maybe, but Labo... He swallowed his words. Natsuhiko didn't want to go anywhere near Labo, no matter what Mashiro said, because he could never forget what happened 9 years ago, on July 7th, 2021. That was the very same place he had exposed Yuri to life or death danger. Burned into Natsuhiko's memory was a fire. That day, Natsuhiko and Yuri sneaked into Labo to see the professor. But a fire broke out, and the kids were trapped in the facility. A fire alarm echoed. Yuri kept sobbing and the broadcast voice kept repeating, in accordance with this emergency, security has shifted to blockade mode, locking down all gates and bulkheads. The gate shut in front of them and wouldn't open. Darn it, why won't it open? What do we do here, kitten? I'm scared. Don't cry, Yuri, I'll do something. Tears welled up in Natsuhiko's eyes. Tears of fear, tears of pain from slamming the gate with his fists. Eventually, Yuri's coughing started to grow weak. If we stay here, Yuri's gonna die. Natsuhiko carried Yuri's body and slowly started to walk. The smoke stung his eyes. He began to tear up. His breathing grew rough. His head hurt. And still he aimlessly wandered, searching for a route to survival. Not even Natsuhiko quite remembered how they were saved after that. He only had a faint memory that someone had come to save them. We were in the hospital before we knew it. But ever since then, the terror didn't end with that traumatic experience. Ever since that day, Yuri could no longer leave the house. And it wasn't just Yuri that changed. That day, around the same time as the fire, a small radiation leak occurred within the facility. Labo denied the existence of a leak, and no report was made mentioning it, but considering their efforts after the fact, a radiation leak was the only possible explanation. Natsuhiko was hospitalized for 3 months following the incident, and even after being discharged, she was required to undergo a yearly physical examination at the hospital. Even now, after 9 years had already passed from their narrow escape from death, Everything changed after that day. By now, Natsuhiko displayed essentially no symptoms of radiation exposure. His body was almost perfectly healthy. That's probably what gave him why he started off with like C grade aptitude and then it magically became S grade, even though it's not meant to change. Radiation exposure, he probably mutated. But with every passing July 7th, and with each mention of Labo, he would recall what happened back then. Natsuhiko and Yuri were still bound together by that incident, even now. And yet I have to go to Labo again? The moment that thought crossed his mind, Natsuhiko began to feel nauseous. He broke out in a cold sweat and his throat went dry. His entire body was tormented by the unpleasant memory. Damn it, is my body refusing to remember? Natsuhiko gritted his teeth, held back the urge to vomit, and finally wrung out some words. Even if Salu's conjecture is correct, it's a problem that's out of our hands, Mashido. No way, aren't you worried, Natsuhiko? Of course I am, but even if Salu's conjecture is right, what do you expect us to do? How do you suggest we stop terrorists from targeting a nuclear reactor? But then what do you suggest we do? First we contact Labo officials. As soon as Natsuhiko began to talk, he heard a familiar voice from behind them. Well, if it isn't Natsuhiko. Huh? Natsuhiko gasped and looked at the owner of the voice. The car was parked at the shoulder of the road and Ukita had come out of the driver's seat. Mr. Ukita, is something the matter? What's all this commotion outside in a place like this? Ukita questioned the kids with a curious look on his face. Suddenly Natsuhiko remembered Mr. Ukita's accident. I wonder how Mr. Ukita still got into an accident though. Beats me. Maybe there's a systems error in his car's ADS. But I thought ADS failures were exceptionally rare. He didn't think too deeply about the cause of the accident at the time, but what if it wasn't an accident? What if Q targeted Mr. Ukita since he's with Labo? Terrified, Natsuhiko rushed up to Ukita. Mr. Ukita, please listen, you see... Natsuhiko and Mashido explained Sully's conjecture. Ukita probably didn't know who Sully was, so they explained her story as well. And after he'd finished hearing everything, Ukita spoke with a grim look on his face. Q's targeting us? That's a huge concern. You know about Q too, Mr. Ukita? Computers are a hobby of mine. Naturally, that includes browsing the internet as well, which is how I happen to learn of them. But never in my wildest dreams do I ever expect they target my own workplace when we've got nothing to do with them. His phrasing sounded a little cynical, but he appeared to believe the kid's words. Natsuhiko sighed in relief as he continued the explanation. We just caught one of those terrorists. You caught one? You kids did. Yes, but he might have just been a diversion. In that case, we can't rest yet, can we? But we at Labo have the strictest security in the entire city. Terrorists couldn't target us even if they tried. I highly doubt they can crush our security that easily. But it wouldn't hurt to be alert. Indeed, it would be disastrous in the off chance that they did manage to take over the facility. So in that case... Okay, I'll talk to the security staff and get them to strengthen security even further. Okay, please do. Mashido and Ukita smiled at each other. On the other hand, Natsuhiko secretly focused his mind. Sorry, Mr. Ukita, it's not like I don't trust you, but... He decided to read Ukita's mind just to make sure, like he did with Jun. I bet he can't. He searched for Ukita's brain waveform and identified him as Type 1. He continued and focused on the desire to know what was on his mind. Please, Mr. Ukita, open your heart to me. The moment that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, he heard a voice echo in his head. Okay, it worked. I can't get these kids involved too. But there's no time. I need to act now. Oh my god, he's the terrorist. That doesn't surprise me at all though. Natsuhiko had gradually gotten used to it by his third attempt. He successfully used empathy. And above all else, Ukita was thankfully opening his heart to them. Thank you, Mr. Ukita. I'm glad we consulted with you. No, I only did what was natural. I have an obligation to fulfill as a member of Labo. But no matter what happens, promise me you kids won't put yourselves in danger. The kids felt that having him as an ally would be big support. Sully obediently listened to Ukita's words. Okay then, I should be heading back to Labo now. I apologize, but we'll have to part here. Okay, please do. Kian? With Natsuhiko and Alice's voices at his back, Ukita returned to his car. Then he drove back towards Labo. As they watched the car drive off, Sully muttered quietly, I don't understand what's on other people's minds. What's this all of a sudden? Well, there's something I want to ask you two. Did you notice anything suspicious about Keiji Ukita's speech and conduct? Huh? Suspicious? An unpleasant premonition quickly spread among them. Sully petted Alice and continued, When I said anything suspicious, I referred to the reason Alice cried out like that. The Kian cries indicates when someone is flustered. Why would he be flustered? Natsuhiko and Mashiro gasped at that word. Wait, what do you mean by flustered? He didn't look that way to me. Alice can detect nuanced changes in facial expression that may be difficult for humans to detect. Subtle indicators such as sweat, muscle tension, and shivering. If her analysis is correct, then he was flustered, but I do not understand the reason why. If he's flustered, it's because he's a terrorist. No way, huh? Which is it? Is Mr. Ikeda a victim or an aggressor? As he pondered, Natsuhiko suddenly realized something. There's something bizarre about what he'd heard of Mr. Ikeda's mental voice. I can't get these kids involved too. But there's no time. Need to act now. There's no time? Natsuhiko had been quite relieved to find out that Ikeda's heart was open, but the more he thought about it, the stranger it seemed. Why would Ikeda think there's no time, just from hearing Salyu's conjecture? Hold on a second. That wasn't all that was strange. I can't get these kids involved too could be taken in a way that meant that he'd already gotten other people involved. There's two possibilities. Either Mr. Ikeda really felt the gravity of the terrorist threat, or Mr. Ikeda is with the terrorists and he thought that we'd caught on to the plans. Natsuhiko's heart pounded. Kyugi's the sleeper agents. Is Mr. Ikeda the sleeper agent in their Labo terrorist plot? Oh crap, let's chase after Mr. Ikeda for now. Yeah. There was no time for Natsuhiko to dwell on unpleasant memories. The kids ran off in the direction they'd seen Ikeda leave. And with that, we're going to wrap this episode up here, because we're out of time for today. I knew he was sus right from the fucking day one. You know I did. I called it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.